You did it last night. And the night before that. Every single night of your life, without choosing to, without trying, your mind leaves the world you know and builds another one from scratch. A world with its own rules. Its own people. Its own logic that makes perfect sense until the moment it doesn't. And then you wake up. And it's gone. You've spent roughly 6 years of your life already inside that place. Maybe more. And you remember almost none of it. Scientists call it REM sleep. Your ancestors called it something else entirely. A message. A doorway. A second life running parallel to this one. But here's what nobody tells you. The question isn't what your dreams mean. The question is why they exist at all. Because dreaming is expensive. Your brain during REM sleep burns nearly as much energy as it does when you're solving problems at a desk. Your body is paralyzed. You're completely vulnerable. In the ancient world, that was dangerous. That was potentially fatal. So why did evolution keep it? Why did natural selection, which ruthlessly eliminates anything that doesn't help you survive, protect this strange nightly hallucination for hundreds of millions of years? The answer reaches back further than you probably expect. Further than humans. Further than mammals. All the way to the first creatures that ever had a brain complex enough to process a world. To understand when humans first started dreaming, you have to understand something uncomfortable. You are not the first dreamer. Not even close. In 2019, a team of researchers at the Max Planck Institute studied the sleep patterns of bearded dragons. Lizards. Creatures with brains roughly the size of a walnut. And they found something that genuinely shocked the neuroscience community. Bearded dragons cycle through two distinct sleep states. One looks almost identical to REM sleep in humans. Their eyes moved. Their brain activity spiked in patterns nearly indistinguishable from dreaming mammals. The researchers watched these lizards and saw what appeared to be the evolutionary ancestor of the thing you do every night. This pushed the origin of dreaming back at least 320 million years. Before the dinosaurs. Before the first mammals. Before anything that would eventually become you had taken its first breath on land. Something in the basic architecture of a complex nervous system appears to generate dreams. Not as a side effect. Not as a glitch. As a feature. The question then becomes what that feature is actually for. For most of human history, the answer seemed obvious. Dreams were messages. Every ancient culture on record treated dreaming as contact with something outside ordinary reality. The Mesopotamians, among the earliest urban civilizations ever recorded, kept what are now called dream books. Clay tablets cataloging thousands of dream symbols and their meanings. If you dreamed of a specific bird, it meant one thing. If you dreamed of water rising, it meant another. Professional dream interpreters held significant social status. They advised kings. The ancient Egyptians built temples specifically designed to induce prophetic dreams. People would travel days to sleep inside them, hoping to receive divine guidance for illness, for warfare, for decisions about crops. The Greeks called this practice incubation. They had dedicated sanctuaries for it. Patients with serious illnesses would sleep inside the temple of Asclepius, god of medicine, waiting for a healing dream that a priest would then interpret. This wasn't superstition in the way modern people sometimes dismiss it. This was a sophisticated system built on a real observation. The observation that when your conscious mind goes quiet, your brain produces experiences that feel more vivid, more emotionally charged, more revelatory than ordinary waking thought. They didn't have neuroscience to explain it. But they noticed it. And they built entire institutions around taking it seriously. Modern science spent most of the 20th century doing the opposite. Dreams were noise. Meaningless electrical discharge. The brain's filing system running a defragmentation process while you weren't using it. The Freudian era of dream interpretation was gradually replaced by a kind of scientific embarrassment around the whole subject. Serious researchers didn't study dreams. Dreams were for therapists and mystics. Then something changed. In 1953, a graduate student named Eugene Aserinsky was monitoring the sleep of his young son using equipment designed to track eye movements. He expected to see slow, drifting motion as the child fell deeper into sleep. Instead he saw a rapid, darting movement. Frantic. Almost like waking eyes scanning a scene. He thought the equipment was broken. It wasn't. Asarinsky, working with his advisor Nathaniel Kleitman at the University of Chicago, had just discovered REM sleep. Rapid eye movement. They woke subjects during these periods and found something remarkable. Nearly every time, people reported vivid, narrative dreams. Let them sleep through it, and the dreams faded from memory within minutes of waking. This was the moment dreaming became a scientific object. And everything scientists found afterward pushed back against the idea that dreams were meaningless. Matthew Walker, a neuroscientist at the University of California, Berkeley, has spent decades studying what REM sleep actually does to the human brain. His findings are difficult to dismiss. During REM sleep, your brain does something it cannot do while you're awake. It replays emotional memories, but with the stress chemistry turned off. The hippocampus and amygdala, regions responsible for memory and emotional response, become highly active. But the prefrontal cortex, which normally applies rational judgment, goes quiet. What this means, Walker argues, is that REM sleep functions as a kind of overnight therapy session. Your brain revisits difficult experiences from a chemically calmer state. It strips the sharp emotional charge away from memories without erasing what you learned from them. The pain of something that happened becomes less sharp. The lesson of it remains. People who are woken specifically during REM sleep and denied this processing show measurably worse emotional regulation the next day. They struggle more with negative stimuli. They can't distinguish threatening faces as accurately. Their social instincts degrade. For a social species that depended on reading other people correctly to survive, that was not a small problem. Your dream life wasn't decorative. It was maintenance. There's another theory. And it's older than neuroscience. The threat simulation theory, developed by Finnish psychologist Antti Revonsuo, begins with a simple observation about the content of dreams. They are disproportionately threatening. Across cultures, across centuries of dream records, across modern laboratory studies, human dreams skew negative. You are chased more than you chase. You fail more than you succeed. You lose things, forget things, arrive unprepared, fall from heights. Revonsuo's argument is that this isn't accidental. Your dreaming brain is a practice environment. A simulator running threat scenarios so your waking nervous system has already rehearsed them. Ancient humans who dreamed vividly of predators, of social conflict, of physical danger were running mental fire drills every single night. When those situations arose in waking life, something in their response system had already been primed. The children who study this most intensely are also the ones who dream the most vividly. Young children, whose brains are rapidly learning to navigate a complex and sometimes dangerous world, spend far more of their sleep in REM than adults do. Newborns spend up to 8 hours a day in what appears to be REM sleep. Some researchers believe the developing brain uses this state to model reality before it has enough experience to test things directly. You may have learned to be human, in part, while you were sleeping. So when did your ancestors first understand that they were dreaming? This is harder to answer. Evidence of the interior life doesn't fossilize. But archaeologists have found indirect traces. Cave paintings in El Castillo in Spain, some dating to over 40,000 years ago, include images that researchers describe as hallucinatory. Figures that blur the boundary between human and animal. Repeated geometric patterns that appear in both altered states and early art traditions worldwide. Some theorists, including David Lewis Williams, argue that certain prehistoric art was created specifically to record visionary experiences, whether induced by ritual, by fasting, by darkness, or by sleep. If that interpretation holds, your ancestors were not just dreaming. They were so struck by the experience that they pressed their hands to cave walls and tried to bring it back into daylight. They were trying to remember. Which means they knew that dreams disappeared. Which means they knew the difference between sleeping and waking. Which means something we would recognize as reflective consciousness was already present tens of thousands of years ago, standing in a firelit cave, troubled by the same question you've probably had. Where does that other place go when you open your eyes? Modern sleep research doesn't have a complete answer. What it has are fragments. Evidence that REM sleep consolidates memory. Evidence that it regulates emotion. Evidence that it may function as a threat rehearsal system. Evidence that its architecture is ancient enough to predate everything that makes you distinctly human. But the experience of dreaming still resists full explanation. You can describe what the brain does during a dream. You cannot fully describe what it's like to be inside one. And that gap, between the biology and the experience, is where your ancestors built their temples. It's where they kept their clay tablets. It's where they waited in the dark for something to speak. Last night you went somewhere. Your body stayed still. Your breathing slowed. The world you navigate every day went dark. And some older part of your brain, the part that has been doing this since before your species had a name for itself, began to build. It built faces and places and situations that followed rules you didn't write. It ran scenarios your waking mind couldn't quite reach. It processed things you didn't know needed processing. And somewhere in those hours, the version of you that lives in daylight was being quietly repaired. You didn't ask for any of that. You never have to. Your ancestors didn't understand what was happening either. But they were right that it mattered. You close your eyes tonight and you will go there again. You always have. That place is older than civilization. And it has always been yours.